I came home for the holidays expecting the usual coldness from my family, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found. My name is Elena Voss. I'm 29 years old and I live in Denver. Every year, I would fly back to Chicago to spend Christmas with my parents and younger sister, Sophia. This year was no different, or so I thought. When I reached the house, I used my old key to open the door. The moment I stepped inside, a strange smell hit me. It was cold, very cold. The heating wasn't on. "Mom? Dad?" I called out. No answer. I walked into the living room and my heart stopped. My grandmother, Margaret, was lying on the floor near the couch. She was wearing a thin nightgown and her lips had a bluish tint. She looked extremely weak and dehydrated. "Grandma!" I rushed to her side and knelt down. She slowly opened her eyes. Her voice was weak and raspy. "Elena, you came?" I quickly checked her forehead. She was ice cold. "Where are Mom and Dad?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Grandma gave a small, tired smile. "They left for Florida 3 days ago, with Sophia. They said they needed a break." My blood ran cold. I immediately pulled out my phone and called my mother. It rang for a long time before she picked up. "Elena?" she said, sounding annoyed. "Why are you calling? We're on vacation." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, I'm at the house. Grandma is lying on the floor. She's freezing and looks half-starved. What the hell is going on?" There was a short pause. Then my mother said something that made my blood boil. "Your daughter can wait. This dinner is for our kids." No, that wasn't what she said. I was so angry I misheard. She actually said, "Don't bother us, Elena. We're on vacation. Your grandmother is fine. She's just being dramatic as usual. We'll be back after New Year's." I was speechless for a few seconds. "Mom, she's on the floor. She can barely speak. It's freezing in here." My mother sighed like I was the one causing problems. "Elena, stop overreacting. We left her food and medicine. She's just trying to get attention. Don't ruin our trip." I felt something snap inside me. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply said, "Fine. Enjoy your vacation." Then I ended the call. I looked at my grandmother, who was trying to sit up but couldn't. Her eyes were filled with shame and exhaustion. I took off my coat and wrapped it around her frail body. "Come on, Grandma. We're leaving." She looked at me with tired eyes. "Where are we going, dear?" I helped her up slowly and replied, "Somewhere warm. Somewhere you'll be taken care of." As I helped her walk toward the door, I looked back at the empty, cold house one last time. 3 days later, my parents would return to a very different house, and they would find something that would make my mother scream. I helped my grandmother into the passenger seat of my car and wrapped her tightly with 2 thick blankets I found in the house. She was shivering badly. Her skin felt like ice. I drove straight to the nearest hospital. On the way, I kept glancing at her. She looked so small and fragile, like a completely different person from the strong woman who used to bake cookies with me when I was a child. At the hospital, the doctors immediately admitted her. She was severely dehydrated and her blood pressure was dangerously low. They told me if I had come even a day later, things could have been much worse. While the doctors were treating her, I sat in the waiting area and made a decision. I wasn't going to just take her away for a few days and then send her back. I was going to take everything. I called a lawyer I had worked with before in Chicago, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Rebecca Ling. I explained the situation to her. She listened carefully and then said something that gave me strength. "If your grandmother is of sound mind, we can move fast. We can get her medical power of attorney and start transferring assets into her name. But we need to act quickly before your parents come back." I didn't hesitate. Over the next 3 days, while my grandmother was recovering in the hospital, I worked nonstop with Rebecca. We got my grandmother to sign the necessary documents. We moved her money and properties into a trust under her name. We also changed the locks on the house and hired a security company. I also made sure my grandmother was moved to a good private care facility where she would be properly looked after. I chose the best one I could find. On the third day, my grandmother held my hand and said in a weak voice, "Elena, you didn't have to do all this. They're still your parents." I looked at her and replied, "No, Grandma. They stopped being my parents the moment they left you alone to die in a cold house." She didn't argue after that. On the morning of the fourth day, my parents and sister landed back in Chicago. They had no idea what was waiting for them. They took a taxi from the airport and reached the house around 11 a.m. The moment they opened the front door, they realized something was wrong. The house was completely empty. All the furniture, paintings, and valuables were gone. The rooms echoed because there was nothing left inside. Even the curtains had been removed. My mother walked into the living room in shock. She kept turning around, trying to understand what had happened. Then she saw it. On the kitchen counter, there was a single white envelope with a lawyer's card attached to it. She picked it up with trembling hands and opened the letter. The letter was short and clear. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Voss, this is to inform you that all assets previously under the name of Margaret Voss have been legally transferred into a trust. You no longer have any legal rights or access to the property or finances. Any attempt to contact or approach Margaret Voss will be considered harassment and legal action will be taken. Regards, Rebecca Lang, attorney at law." My mother read the letter twice. Then she screamed. A loud, furious, and broken scream that echoed through the empty house. My father rushed into the kitchen. "What happened?" he asked. My mother threw the letter at him with shaking hands. "She took everything!" she screamed. "That bitch took everything! The house, the money, everything!" My father read the letter and his face turned red with rage. At that exact moment, my phone started ringing. It was my mother. I was sitting in the care facility with my grandmother when I saw her name flash on my screen. I didn't pick up. Instead, I just stared at it as it kept ringing. My grandmother looked at me from her bed. "Are you going to answer?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "They can wait, just like they made you wait." I put my phone on silent and placed it face down on the table. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. My mother kept calling me nonstop for the next 2 days. She sent dozens of messages, some begging, some threatening, and some even trying to guilt-trip me by bringing up family. I didn't reply to a single one. On the third day, she showed up at the care facility where my grandmother was staying. I was sitting with Grandma in the garden when one of the staff members came and informed me that my mother was at the reception demanding to see her. I told them not to let her in. A few minutes later, my mother called me again. This time I picked up. "Elena," she said, her voice shaking with anger, "how dare you do this? How dare you take everything from us? That house belongs to this family." I stayed calm. "No, Mom, that house belongs to Grandma, and you left her alone in the cold to die. So now she's the one who decides what happens to it." She started shouting, "You manipulative little bitch! You planned this, didn't you? You turned her against us." I cut her off. "Mom, I didn't turn her against you. You did that yourself when you abandoned her. I just made sure she was safe. And from now on, you will not contact her. You will not come near her. If you try, my lawyer will handle it." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then my mother spoke in a low, threatening voice. "You're going to regret this, Elena. I'm still your mother." I replied coldly, "No, you stopped being my mother a long time ago." I ended the call and blocked her number. That evening, I sat with my grandmother in her room. She was looking much better now. Color had returned to her face, and she was eating properly. She held my hand and said, "Elena, I know you did all of this for me, but are you sure you want to cut them off completely? They're still your family." I looked at her and smiled gently. "Grandma, family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them. You showed up for me my whole life. They didn't. So from now on, it's just you and me." She squeezed my hand, and I saw tears in her eyes. A few weeks later, my father was released on bail.
He tried to contact me through my brother, but I refused to speak to him. My mother, on the other hand, completely lost it. She started telling people in their social circle that I had stolen everything from them. But nobody believed her after the news of my father's arrest spread. Slowly, their so-called friends started distancing themselves. The same people who used to praise my parents for being a respectable family now avoided them. My brother Damien tried to reach out once. He said he wanted to meet and talk. I agreed to meet him at a cafe. When he saw me, he looked tired and guilty. "I didn't know they left Grandma alone," he said. "Mom told me she was staying with a nurse. I should have checked." I looked at him and replied, "You should have, but you didn't. Just like you never stood up for me whenever Mom treated me badly." He lowered his head. "I'm sorry, Elena. I really am." I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't, but I also didn't completely shut him out. "I'm not ready to have a relationship with you right now, Damien," I said honestly. "Maybe one day, but not today." He nodded, accepting my decision. 6 months later, my grandmother had fully recovered and was living comfortably in a nice apartment I had arranged for her. She had nurses visiting daily, and I made sure she never felt alone again. As for my parents, they lost almost everything. The house was gone, their reputation was destroyed, and they were left with very little. My father's business partners had completely abandoned him after his arrest. One evening, while I was having dinner with my grandmother, she suddenly said, "Elena, do you think I should forgive them?" I looked at her and smiled.
"Grandma, that's your choice, but I've already made mine. I'm not going to carry their toxicity anymore. I've chosen peace." She nodded slowly and said, "Then I'll choose peace too." I held her hand and smiled. That night, as I was driving back home, I realized something important. My parents had left my grandmother alone, thinking she had no one. They underestimated her. And more importantly, they underestimated me. They thought I would stay quiet like I always did, but this time I didn't. And because I didn't, everything they tried to protect, their money, their status, their control, was taken away from them. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't loud or violent. Sometimes it's simply removing yourself and the people you love from those who don't deserve them, and watching them face the consequences of their own actions.